You're listening to Hot Topics on Good Mix Radio, hosted by Mike Melody and Sheila Harmony. And each week, they dive into the top trends, pop culture moments, and viral stories dominating the web. They unpack the chaos with humor, sharp takes, and insights you won't find anywhere else.
Welcome to the deep dive. So we've got all this source material in front of us, articles, reports, bits of research, basically pointing to what the internet was really buzzing about in one specific week, mid-May 2025.
That's right. And our goal today, looking through these sources and using Google Trends as our main guide, is to really unpack the big topics that grabbed everyone's attention online globally during that particular week.
Yeah, Google Trends is always so interesting. It's like getting a direct pulse, isn't it? Seeing what millions of people were actually searching for.
It really is. And what jumps out from your material is just how varied it all was. You've got sports drama, surprise comebacks for classic shows, and then the bleeding edge of streaming culture. It's a real snapshot.
It really makes you think about what actually makes something trend these days. The sources seem to confirm it's still that mix, social media blowing things up, maybe a celebrity gets involved or just hits a nerve culturally or emotionally.
Exactly. It's about reading that digital pulse. And these trends, according to the material we have here, they give us some pretty good clues about online behavior and, well, what we all tend to focus on together.
Okay, so before we dive into the specifics, maybe just briefly, how does Google Trends actually paint this picture for us? Like, what's going on there?
Fundamentally, it's analyzing how often specific search terms are used over time compared to the total search volume. It's less about raw numbers and more about the relative spike in interest. It filters out the steady noise to show what's actually surging.
Got it. So it's spotting those peaks in curiosity. And the whole anatomy of something going viral in 2025, your sources suggest it's pretty involved.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost never just one thing. Social media is a huge amplifier, of course. But the sources often point to a combination it needs to connect with something current or tap into a feeling, maybe surprise, maybe humor. It's that kind of perfect storm that lets it cut through.
Right. Okay, let's dig into the first major trend your sources really highlight from mid-May 2025, the Indiana Pacers.
Yes, the Pacers. Their playoff run was a massive story, according to the search data. Just a classic underdog tale that completely took off.
Yeah, one source called it nothing short of remarkable. You had these amazing comebacks, really tough defense. Apparently their games were just unmissable television.
They really were. And your sources pull out some key moments that clearly broke through. I think there was a mention of a crazy triple overtime win against a top seed and a buzzer beater shot in another game. These weren't just wins. They felt like major events.
And the coaches' tactics seem crucial, too. This focus on defensive flexibility and what the sources called small ball lineups.
Yes, that was definitely highlighted. Going with smaller, faster players instead of traditional centers, let them be super agile on defense, constantly switching overwhelming teams with speed. The sources really credit that tactical shift.
Right, and you can't have a run like that without standout players. Who are the key names popping up in the material?
Well, their star point guard comes up again and again, just providing that leadership, making the big plays when it mattered most. He was kind of the engine driving it all.
Okay, yeah. You can see why basketball Twitter would just eat that up. That kind of gritty, unexpected success is like prime material for online sports talk.
Totally. The Pacers fever, as some called it, was definitely real on social media. You had viral clips of celebrations, endless memes about the team's attitude or specific plays. It just seemed to flood everyone's feeds.
And it wasn't just people watching passively, right? Fans were actually creating stuff themselves.
Yeah, that was interesting. Fan art, even fan fiction about the team's story popping up. And some of that fan-made stuff actually went viral itself, getting shared way beyond the initial fan groups, sometimes even mentioned by sports media.
And then you throw celebrity endorsements into the mix.
Right. When famous athletes or singers started tweeting about the games or wearing Pacers gear, it just broadened the audience instantly, pulling their followers in. It really cemented the team's spot in that week's cultural conversation.
So the big takeaway for you here is how a compelling real-world narrative, especially that underdog angle, can just dominate online. It doesn't just create buzz, it builds actual communities and sparks all this creativity. It kind of reminds you that human stories are still at the heart of what captures our attention online.
Okay, shifting gears quite a bit now, from the intensity of the NBA playoffs to something, well, completely different. Another huge trend your sources flagged was the return of a much-loved cartoon. The Amazing World of Gumball.
Oh yeah, Gumball. That show definitely has a loyal following. What exactly brought it back into the limelight so strongly in 2025?
It was a surprise announcement, apparently. News dropped about new seasons, new content coming, and the way they announced it really seemed to hit the mark, sparking huge excitement and chatter in all of the online fan communities.
Sounds like some smart nostalgia marketing at play there.
Oh, for sure. They clearly tapped into that deep affection, especially from millennials and Gen Z who basically grew up watching it. It was a really effective way to make something familiar feel urgent and relevant again.
And the material suggests the new stuff wasn't just a retread. The creative direction got good feedback.
Yeah, the sources pointed to a noticeable evolution. Things like updated character designs, maybe a richer color palette, more dynamic animation techniques. It felt like Gumball, but also refreshed.
And they introduced new characters, too, that people liked.
Exactly, which helped fuel what your sources are calling a cultural renaissance for the show. It went from being this beloved cult thing to a genuine internet phenomenon during that week.
Which kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Gumball's whole vibe, that weird humor, the meta jokes, the satire, it feels like a perfect match for the sort of meme-heavy, slightly absurd internet culture of 2025.
It really does. Specific quotes and scenes, especially stuff around concepts like the void, apparently became instant meme templates and started showing up as internet slang across social feeds.
And it even sparked fan theories about the storylines.
Yeah, because the show actually has some surprising depth beneath the surface humor. So fans started debating theories on places like Reddit and Twitter, which just shows how invested they got really quickly.
It's a really neat example, isn't it? How you can blend that powerful nostalgia with genuinely fresh, creative choices to not just revive something old, but make it feel completely current and embedded in today's online world.
Okay, moving on to the world of individual creators now. Cenat. That name was absolutely everywhere in mid-May 2025, according to your sources, just dominating the streaming news.
Yes, that unprecedented 72-hour stream. The sources frame it as like a masterclass in holding an audience's attention.
72 hours is just,
yeah,
incredible. What did the sources say made it work so well?
Well, they mentioned specific high points that seemed planned, like a huge surprise giveaway that apparently caused a temporary surge, almost crashing the platform. But beyond the big moments, it was more about his ability to just constantly foster that community feel, making viewers feel like they were part of it, not just watching.
And I bet collaborations help boost the numbers too. Definitely. The sources note that bringing in other high-profile streamers or personalities was key to pulling in different audiences and keeping the energy up over such a long time.
Now, your sources also mention, alongside all the streaming success, he was also kind of at the center of other online conversations, even some controversy, which helped keep his name in the headlines.
That's correct. The material indicates that while the stream itself was the main event, the fact that he was simultaneously being discussed and debated for other reasons meant his name recognition was just incredibly high across the board that week. We're just reporting what the sources state here, of course.
Understood. And it sounds like his influence extends beyond just entertaining people. It's actually shaping the creator landscape.
For sure. What your sources term the business of being Kai seems really significant. The big platform deals he was signing were seen as setting new precedents for creator contracts, kind of pushing the whole industry forward. Plus, he's branched out into merchandise, building a whole brand identity.
So he's effectively become a kind of blueprint for the next wave of creators.
That's the sense you get. His success story is inspiring others, and it also plays a role in the growing diversity you see in streaming different voices, different styles, finding huge audiences.
And brands are definitely taking notice. What did the sources say about this cry effect on marketing?
Well, they're adapting. You see more and more brands wanting to partner directly with streamers like him, recognizing that's where huge audiences are spending their time. They're tailoring campaigns to fit that digitally native environment.
What this really drives home for you is just the sheer power individual creators can wield now. They're not just entertainers anymore. They're shaping business models, influencing trends, and playing a big part in online culture and representation. It's a massive shift reflected in this data.
Okay, one last major trend to unpack. This one from the movie world, which also got huge global attention. Disney's live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch.
Right. That was unavoidable. The first trailer dropped and just exploded. Sources described the reaction as a real mix, lots of excitement, but also some definite skepticism.
Yes, the sources definitely captured that duality, but they also immediately highlighted the visuals as being really impressive. The CGI used to bring Stitch And The Other Creatures to Life was apparently seen as pretty cutting edge.
And using the original soundtrack, that must have hit the nostalgia button hard.
Oh, absolutely. That instantly connected with people who love the animated film. But, as you hinted, the casting choices definitely stirred up some passionate debates online among certain fan groups. The sources reported quite a bit on that.
It just shows how attached people get to these stories, doesn't it?
It really does. But beyond the technical side and the casting buzz, what your sources found really interesting was why this particular remake seemed to resonate so much in 2025. And a big piece of that puzzle was the focus on authentic Hawaiian cultural representation.
So they really emphasize the traditional values, the language, the customs, and especially that core idea of ohana, of family.
Exactly. And presenting that central theme with care and sensitivity seemed to connect with audiences worldwide. Your sources suggest Disney managed a tricky balancing act, delivering the nostalgia people wanted, but also updating the storytelling, maybe adding some new elements or characters that felt contemporary, but still respected the original.
So like little nods for the longtime fans, but also making it accessible for newcomers.
Precisely. It wasn't just a copy-paste job. It was framed as a reimagining designed for today's audience while still honoring the source material's cultural roots.
What this trend seems to show you is how the big studios are thinking about their beloved franchises now. It's about tapping into that existing affection, yes, but also bringing in the latest tech, showing cultural awareness, which is huge now, and finding ways to make these stories feel relevant all over again.
So when you look back at all these different threads from mid-May 2025, you've got the sports Cinderellas, the cartoon comebacks, the solo streaming star, the big movie remake. It really paints a vibrant picture of what we were all collectively obsessed with online, at least for that week.
Yeah, it definitely underscores that what grabs us online is still this potent cocktail of nostalgia, pure entertainment value, and finding things that feel culturally significant, sometimes in really surprising ways.
And underneath it all, there's that fundamental desire for community, isn't there? For shared experience. Whether it's cheering for a team, picking apart a TV show, joining a streamer's chat, or arguing about a movie, it's all about connecting with others through these shared points of interest.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive, drawing on everything your sources revealed about May 2025's digital landscape, maybe here's something for you, the listener, to chew on. Considering how incredibly fast these wildly different topics can capture our collective online focus, and then how quickly that focus can shift again, what does that sheer speed and breadth tell us about how we connect and maybe even how we process information in this constantly churning digital age?